and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Young Kang from ADB's Knowledge Sharing and Services Center, and I'll be moderating today's Knowledge Sharing webinar series. This webinar is presented by the Asia Leadership Program as part of the post-event activities of the annual program 2017 in Tokyo last month. The Knowledge Sharing webinar series is one of the 4 core learning activities of the Asia Leadership Program. And it's very unfortunate to announce that today's presentation will be the last of the webinar series. However, the proceedings from all the events and the recordings of the webinars will be shared through the Asia Leadership Program website. Before I introduce today's speaker, there's a couple of reminders for you. Please keep your microphone mute, and I'll engage you when you, and there will be a Q&A session after the presentation. So then I'll probably announce to you that you can turn on the microphone then. So until then, please mute your microphone. Our speaker for today's webinar is Dr. Kee-Yung Nam of the Economic Research and Regional Cooperation Department of the Asia Development Bank. Dr. Nam joined ADB in March 2010 and is working as a principal economist in the Economic Analysis and Operational Support Division. Prior to working at ADB, he worked as energy economist, energy planner in the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, contributed to IAEA's capacity building in the field of energy environment planning, particularly in the application of IAEA's analytical tools for energy system analysis and planning, assisted in the design and evaluation of sustainable energy strategies that addressed climate change issues, assessed economic and environmental aspects of energy system, and prepared knowledge products related to energy, electricity, and nuclear power. He also worked at the Environmentally Compatible Energy Strategies in International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Luxembourg. And he conducted long-term global energy economic environment analysis and contributed to development and applications of energy economic environment models. He received his PhD in economics from the University of Vienna, and today he will discuss the difference between economic and financial analysis and provide example of frequently measured economic benefits by each sector. Without further ado, Dr. Nam.
Thank you, Dr. Kang. Thank you. It's my honor to be giving a presentation during this webinar. And, I would like to just say, it might be some expectation on the really hands-on training, but there are other type of the workshop and training courses ongoing on the same topic. In fact, here today, I'm just to explain more on the basic introductory about what the bank's ADB's economic analysis is. So first thing, what we are looking at here is we are talking about the project economic analysis, project or program economic analysis that ADB is sponsoring. And why it is important that we do is at the present stage, what we are saying is that in the charter of the ADB, which they call Agreement Establishing the Asian Development Bank, and this Article 14, which says that the consideration of any ADB-sponsored project or should be given the consideration to the economy and efficiency. And then it goes on, and then Article 36.2 that requires that the decision-making of the ADB's investment project should only give on the economic consideration. So in order to look at the economic efficiency, the economic analysis will really validate or test whether any investment project will be economically viable or not. So we are doing our responsibilities to review and provide technical advices to the operational department for the economic due diligence link document on the economic analysis that we are doing that. Okay, from that one, and then I will just go into the just what is the economic analysis, because everybody. It's often the case is that they are looking at economic analysis is just like a cost-benefit analysis. But that is not only the one that, of course, economic cost-benefit analysis will validate, so to say, test that whether this is the really economically viable or not. But before we go into the cost-benefit analysis, the economic analysis, it contains like 10 key areas that we have to look into. And here I just have a summary table on that. What are the 10 key areas that the guideline is looking at it? And why we are saying that is important is that this economic analysis, just like I was mentioning in the ADB charter, that is the economic analysis in compliance with the operation manual of the ADB. And that's the OMG1, and then you have staff instructions to follow. From the 10 key areas that we are looking at today, you have everything in the PowerPoint, we are looking at more or less 4 or 5 areas are more on the rational aspects at the appraisal stage, while the other 6 is more we are talking about how really we are testing the economic viability of the investment project. So when we, it's like giving a just picture is that, I'm sure that you have all the presentation material. First thing is, then, let me go into it a little later. But the thing is, then what is the role of economic analysis that we have mentioned that more in the economic terminology. When the economic efficiency, when we talk about that, it should bring some increases in the GDP. So when we talk later on, when you hear the net present value of any benefit or something, this is, in fact, of course, there is some conversions required, but generally this is the part of the GDP increases. And then it is not only that one, but it also contributes to the broader objective that the government or the project has in terms of the poverty reduction as well as the social inclusion. And then we look at the externality, especially in environmental sustainability. And why we are looking at is the economic analysis, because we are looking mainly on the opportunity cost of the oil cost side, because any input that you are putting in terms of goods and services, that will have an opportunity cost, that if you save this, that you will use this resources to the other part of the economy. That's why we are looking at this direction. And when we are saying that, and then why we are doing this is because everywhere the goods and services or these resources are limited, and the economic analysis will try to see that how to utilize limited resources most effectively to enhance the economic development or to contribution to the economic development. So when we look at all this, when we are saying that when we're saying economically efficient project, then overall we have to look into the aspect that always specific investment project should generate the economic surplus, and this economic surplus should be more than its opportunity cost. So that's where we are talking about cost and benefit. And then, this is where we are looking at that one. And then not only that one, because we are doing the, not only one time of the investment project, but we look at more on the technical design life of each projects. It varies. However, what we would like to see is that the benefit that we are estimating at the appraisal stage, that is only possible when you have a when this is properly maintained in terms of O&M. Otherwise, at some point, that benefit will not be, achieved. So that is to look at. And then also, economic analysis looked at it also. When we take it gives you a contribution to the poverty and all the things. Then we are looking at also if we are looking at any project that is meant to be for poor people or poverty alleviation aiming, then we will conduct some kind of a distribution analysis to see who is really getting what, to see the stakeholders. So that's the one that, and then later on, it is coming in, and then we estimate the poverty impact ratio and everything like that. So how do I go back? one more. That's better. Yeah, because since you have all the questions later, but I will go from this point to the explain rather than reading through all this, because you can read it. When we look at the macroeconomic context, first, any project has to be, first you are looking at the macroeconomic context. What is this, how to influence that? Because there is always market distortion. And then, there's some of these macroeconomic factors that you have to take it into consideration, because some of the, factors like, exchange rate fluctuations, some of the structural policies, physical position, whether this will, maintain sustainability and these kind of things. So any project should bring some kind of economic surplus in the macroeconomic aspects. So that is the part of the rationale that you're looking at in the macroeconomic context. And then once it is fixed, then we have to look at it in the sector specific, from the kind of a sector analysis, or we say that, a sector context. It should bring the rationale that, is there anything limited resources or any policies within the sector to bring? Like, we're looking at environmental aspects of some of this, emission reductions, these externalities, or is it a supply security issues within the sector? So we have to look at it into the sector context, whether the project is appropriate to cover that one in the sector. And then afterwards, what we're looking at is then, and then we are looking at, it's a ADB specific, we're looking at the financial modality based on this, whether this is the kind of, it requires a huge upfront amount, and then it requires the kind of integrated system approach that we have to take it. Depends on what type of the project we're looking at. Is a simple investment project, or it's a multi-tranche facility, MFF, or it is any reform in the policy-based lending, or So we have to look into it in the sector development projects, or it is a financial intermediary. So we have to look at it into what is the best modality that requires. And then based on that, we are looking at all this, everybody knows that, we are formulating or establishing this DMF, project design and monitoring framework, where we are looking at what will be the impact, but impacts we are not, economic analysis will measure everything at the outcomes level, and then we're looking at output. So when we look at the DMF, then there is always output, and what are the kind of indicators, performance indicators that output will bring, and how this output will bring any kind of a positive project impact that will be on the outcome level. And that is where we are measuring the economic viability of the project. So then once this is all thing is a rational aspects, and then we start with a really economic analysis in terms of a quantification, where it requires now, we are clear on the cost side, but then we'll look at each benefit, what to be identified, and how the things are. So how we do it is the most important thing is that what is the demand? There are often cases like the demand is a backbone of this economic analysis. So demand in general, you have three methodology. One is based on the survey. Sometimes you can do with extrapolation, or some of them with a sophisticated model that you can apply that, and then you can come up with a demand. But often the case is then the economic analysis will look at, and then we are trying to measure direct project incremental benefit between the with and without project. So even the without project, you have to have your own scenario that with a given current status or current situation, what will be expected demand? And then we have to come out with a project, you're expecting how the demand is. And then this demand gap between, the demand between with and without project, we are estimating all kinds of the benefit from these two scenarios. The cost is obviously because without project and with a project, this is a total with a project. And then we have to commit into the O&M cost in addition. That's how we are calculating the thing. And once you have a demand estimates, and then you have to consider what will be the best option to make this gap, to supply or to satisfy this gap. Okay, so then we are conducting alternative or least cost option. So, is it best way to, there are many technology, which technology that you are choosing is one part of it. And then also we are looking at least cost. But now these days, we are not only looking at the least cost, but we are all looking at the, depends on the country level that, we are urging more, encouraging more to use the, higher level technology. So that, this is to sustain your, inclusive growth even in the future, rather than the cheapest technology that we are implementing. But given that limited resource and given the limited, whatever that you have, we have to, there are several ways of alternative that, for instance, there is a vaccination for in case of a health project, or if you have, there is a vaccination that you are introducing, or you are doing the, some kind of a medical care system. Which one will be the better way to meet the, so to say, your demand? Then we are measuring which is the best option. So often they stop at that point, but the thing is, that is not the way that we are estimating. So what we're doing is that then we are conducting this alternative analysis or least or cost effectiveness analysis at that point to identify what will be the best solution that the project. So identify the investment project first, okay? Once you have identified these projects, then we know the, the cost of the total investment. And then what will be the O&M cost to operate and maintain this investment project. And then once we have that, and then we try to identify which are the benefits that you can think of. So that benefit can be anything differ from the sector, differ from each of the investment projects. So we are looking at what are the, you have to first identify the benefit, and then we have to come up with the best way of benefit. And then once we have conducted, and then assume that economic analysis, economic viability is tested, which passes a hurdle rate. Currently, discount rate of 9%, which was with a new guideline. And then we are saying that this is economically viable. But then we are conducting, so to say, the sensitivity and risk analysis to measure what will be the critical parameters that it changes any critical parameter that will have an impact on the economic viability. So often it does it very much in the mechanic way of 10% increase or something, but what we would like to see is more on the specific way of doing that. And then there is a kind of a parameter that we give that's a switching value we call. If this is low switching value, that gives you in terms of a percentage. If it's as low, then it is possible that this goes, then any changes or something, this is very sensitive to the economic viability of the project. Okay, and then we are also doing as I mentioned, that distribution analysis to see who are the, who is getting what from this benefit. And then, these are all can be achieved when there is a financial sustainability of the project. So this is the very often it's about when we say 10 key areas, then, we are looking at the 10 key areas. And then let me go into this difference between financial and what? because I'm jumping one to one because to give you a more clear picture. Often they say that financial analysis, economic analysis, like, same, similar, and then it's very well known that, if you, in the economic analysis, you are not taking the transfer payment, tax and duties, and then, inflation price contingencies, and then you will get more or less, this is the economic value, which is not correct. The thing is that it has differences between the financial and economic analysis in terms of financial economic values or prices. The thing is that why we are not taking, that is the one thing that you have to think about. What does it mean that it's a transfer payment of tax and duties? In the financial analysis, where you're looking at is between the two entities or three entities, involved entities that you are estimating the net cash flow. And that means that's market price. And then you are using the, if it's a tariff, revenue, these kind of things. And then obviously in the financial analysis, you're taking into all these changes of, tax and duties. In the economic analysis, we're looking at the opportunity cost. Thus, what it means is that there is a tax paid or something. This transfer payment is only the moving the same goods and services within the economy. It's just a matter of who is getting it. So it remains the same amount in the economy. So that's why we are not taking into account of the transfer payment, because we are looking at economy as a whole. While the financial analysis, they are looking at more on the revenue and net cash flow, we are looking at the welfare gains in the economy. Okay, so this is a table where we look at, like a price. It is in the financial analysis. You can use the current price or sometimes a constant price, but in economic analysis, you have to use always constant price, which will, and then there will not going to be any inflation taken into. So price contingency are not excluded. When we look at some of this depreciation, of course it will estimate that, but to the economic analysis is necessary. If there is anything, then we are also looking at, and not in the cost benefit analysis, but in the distribution analysis, we are including the depreciation of any physical infrastructure. Price contingency always omits, and working capital, everything we are looking at more on the physical working capital that we are counting. And then, we look at the price that is often, what is the financial price? There's a financial analysis they are using like a market price, and financially is you use. In the economic analysis, we are looking at more or less economic price that reflecting the contribution to welfare. So that is the word we are talking about, shadow pricing. So how we are looking at the shadow price is because we are looking at the macroeconomic indicator of the, so to say, shadow standard conversion factor. If you use price, border price numerator, this is the little going to too much technical, but and then when you use inverse of standard conversion factor as a shadow exchange rate factor, that we are looking at to have this exchange distortion to make a border parity. And we are not only looking at only the labors, then we use also shadow wage rate factor. It's not just like a financial price that they are getting wages. For the unskilled labor in the economy where you have employment surplus, then it's often the case is the unskilled labor, they are overpaid. So that we are looking at the shadow wage rate factor. So we, so to say, shadow price the wages of the unskilled labor. So we are looking at the price from the different price system that you use in the financial and economy. In terms of externality, like any negative or positive externality impacts, such as in the financial analysis you are excluding, in the economic analysis we are including this externality as cost or as a benefit. Typical example will be some kind of CO2 emissions. It doesn't have any value. Some of them, they use a carbon price or something, carbon traded value or something. But it's not in the financial analysis, while in the economic analysis, we are taking into that as a benefit of that one. In terms of discount rate, while the financial analysis rather look at, of course, there is a financial net present value as well as a financial internal rate of return, just like economy EIRR, economic internal rate of return and economic net present value, but more in the financial analysis of the public investment, you're looking at more on the weighted cost of capital, while we are looking at standard opportunity cost rate, which is discount rate. Okay. And of course, the distribution side, when we look at analysis, cover the government and project investors in the financial analysis, while economic analysis covers all the stakeholders where they are looking at that. And then I will just give you a little bit of the benefits maybe. And, some of the examples so that, it is much better that, which are the benefit that you are looking at. It's a major activity in the investment project that the ADB is sponsoring is, transport, energy, now urban water, education. We're looking at in case of a transport, in most cases that we are looking at non-incremental benefit from the transport because of the, like a road transport, new highway or new better road with better roughness index, as well as that will, change that, there will be generated traffic, diverted traffic, and this all will have impacts. The benefit will come with time savings, or VOC savings, including fuel. These are the things that we are calculating on that one. So in that sense, that the benefit is we are saying that non-incremental benefit in terms of resource cost savings, mainly from the time and VOC vehicle operating costs. Of course, there are some changes in the, there is a reduction of the accidents, or there is any kind of some of this environmental externality that, it will reduce. It depends on what type of the road that we are looking at. If there was no road, now there is, so that, the traffic volume will increase, and then that will emit. So it might be possible also you have a negative environmental impact, then we have to take that emission cost as a cost side of that one. So, and then, I was mentioning a little bit about that this MFF, like a multi-system approach, so to say, in the, like, you are, constructing a huge let's say, highway, and then each trench you will look at in the series of certain sections or something. So in that case, we call that as a system approach because you cannot really estimate the whole thing entire. So we'll do the total economic analysis because the demand will happen maybe in the to the end point. So we are looking at that, and then we do the calibration of that to estimate the benefit of that one. So in that case, we do the time slice or system approach, and then calibrate it to slicing of that one. And similarly, like a power project, there are many different power projects. There is some replacement of introducing the renewable to replace the dirty coal, or there is inefficient power plant, and then also there is the transmission, distribution, rehabilitation, or putting up the new lines and all the things. Here we are looking at in this normal cases in the power sector or energy sector projects, we are looking at both sides, incremental and non-incremental benefit. incremental benefit we are looking at because of the projects that the new consumer or current existing consumer will be provided with more goods and services. And at the same time, you have certain resource cost savings on the resource cost savings. So all this resource cost savings, we classify that as a non-incremental benefit, while to supply the new services that will be all estimated in the incremental benefit. And then obviously there is in the theory that there is always a consumer surplus of welfare gain that we are estimating. But in general, in the financial analysis, you are measuring that with additional electricity that you are supplying it to the new consumer. In the financial analysis, you're looking at only the revenue generated by that amount, so practically tariff multiplied by the output. In the economic analysis, instead of tariff, that we are looking at the willingness to pay. Okay, and then in addition to the financial benefit, that we are looking at also the non-incremental benefit that what would have that they have used some other fuel type for substitution, and that is saved through this project. So that way that we are looking at in the projects. So you also have CO2 emissions, environmental benefit, as well as all the efficiency improvement, additional output amount. So these will be all saved. In terms of a water project, it's very similar in terms of a water supply. Then simply that you can say that this is the water supply that will serve additional water to the consumers. It is similar to what we discussed in the energy sector. But in terms of a non-incremental benefit, in terms of resource cost savings, might have, in general, two things. One is what was the, additional, some supplemented, the water that you have used. And then also because of that, you had some kind of health damage that it can be avoided with this water supply. In terms of wastewater, also same thing is that then we are looking at more on the damage cost that we are calculating, damage to the health. And then we are making that as that these are the benefits that we are looking at. In terms of education in Tibet, it says obviously it's a different aspect that we are looking at, because just after the Tibet, after the education, you will not be. It's very hard to identify what is the direct outcomes or benefit, because the outcome is measured like how many were graduated, enrolled, and graduated. But what we are looking at is the benefit is all the objective rationale of the project is that will have an impact on the economy, surplus to the economy. That's why we are looking at more on the the incremental earnings that we are measuring after years. But in the other side that we are looking at the cost, that we have to also take it into consideration cost, because of any person who is going to to get the education through these facilities, then if they are workers, then there is an opportunity cost that they could not work, so that we have to plug it into the cost. So that's how we are estimating both and then side of that. Obviously, then there is we are often used, so to say, indicator called the cost effectiveness index or indicator that we look at that. So these are the things that we are looking at in the education. Health project, I just mentioned that is similar to that one, that we are measuring how much is the damage. Of course, there are several ways to do it, but the thing is, first we have to identify, and then we are doing that. So these are the more or less is the benefit by different projects that we are looking at. So how far do we go?
Thank you very much for your presentation. gave us a pretty good understanding of what we mean by economic analysis and the difference between the financial analysis and economic analysis, where financial analysis is mostly sort of an accounting principled numbering of the benefit and cost, whereas economic analysis also looks at the much wider array of benefits and costs that are implied by conducting a project in a certain region. Also, we've seen the list of examples of what it means to have sort of a typical examples of the benefits in each sector. And it seems that the underlying principle and approaches are quite similar across different sectors. That you would want to identify almost all the benefits that you can identify, and then compare that with the opportunity cost and the actual cost, and then try to make a good justification for doing your project, that you're doing more good than creating cost. So if there's anyone who may have questions that they want to ask, now is the time that you turn on your mic, ask questions. Okay, now Dr. Nam is conducting a series of training at the moment with the ADB staff and also the resident.
Yeah, what we're doing is per year that we are conducting the much more. I mean, this is only just the overview. We are conducting 3 to 4 days of a training course for the ADB staff, one at the headquarters, and then one in the regional hub training course that we are going at for the RM staff. So last year we conducted one in Vietnam for the SERD, and this year we are going to Kyrgyz Republic, and there we'll do the CWRD, the thing, and then we are conducting one sector-specific training course jointly with the BPPP, and then we are doing for the DMCs upon request from the operational department. So we have TA that we are conducting the similar training course for the DMC officials, and 5 regional hub training course we have this year, and we have conducted only East Asia. Great. Regional department.
So look for an opportunity in your area, that look for the announcement of the training. So you might be able to attend the 3.5-day training in a far more detailed steps of what it means to do an economic analysis. Probably you are forced to go through each steps of actually calculating and doing all these economic analyses. But then most often this tool is quite rational approach in justifying a project, but then there are projects that are arising from the demand that are not so clearly economically viable, and yet it is demanded by many of the people. And then if the due requirement, the due diligence requires you to perform these type of economic analysis, then how would you approach and solve that situation?
In the most cases, that how we see it is that that's why I just gave the very brief discussion on the benefit identification. But there are always a benefit. It's not just those officers that they are not clear yet what are the benefits. So we try to identify what the benefits are, and when we look at closely, then there is always a benefit that can be quantified. Of course, there are some benefits that you cannot quantify. In this case, is that you can, provide this qualitative information in the link document or due diligence that, that cannot be quantified. But, but we try to get all the quantified benefits into that, and then to show in the economic due diligence.
Is there any requirement that you have to prove that there's some sort of a causal link between the project and the generated benefit, or is it based on the existing researches that you justify that these will be the benefits that can be accounted as the contribution from the project?
No, this is that we have to really look at into it, because that's why I was emphasizing that we are doing the project investment cost, and that this is how the ADB guideline sees it, is we are stopping. That's why I said we are looking at the outcomes level. Any kind of impact benefits or any impact we call impact, positive impacts, that is, we see that in most cases is a multiplier effect. We are not we are not taking into estimating we are removing, so to say, the multiplier effect. The reason is simply that there is additional cost should be there to have this impact. So meaning is that, okay, electricity generation, it will supply to we are looking at forward linkages. If there is electricity, and then it will be consumed by the residential sector, and that they spend. That's why they use up. But if it goes to the industry, so the industry can operate their factory to produce any other additional goods, and then it has also economic benefit out of it. But in order to do that, that's what we are saying is a multiplier effect from the generated project. If we estimate that, then what we are saying is the cost of the factory should be also taken into the consideration of the economic
Not
benefit.
just the benefit.
Not only the benefit, otherwise it's just a multiplier effect.
But then still it could be included.
Included if you can identify all the cost and put it into the cost.
So in terms
So
of
that's a multiplier effect that we're looking at.
So in terms of the time horizon for a project, that say that you have identified the benefit that may happen or will happen after 5 years or 6 years, then the cost is most imminent at the moment. Then how would you justify that benefit to accounting that benefit into reflecting the projects?
You mean that direct benefit, or what you're
Either
saying?
direct benefit
No,
or
we are
the
looking
indirect
at we are
benefits?
looking at only the direct
Okay.
project direct benefit. Okay, that is the word we are saying. That's why there's a whole thing about that in the beginning that we talked about the rationale of that one, and then I mentioned very clearly that the demand analysis is the backbone of the thing. If there is no demand, whatever that you create the project, you're not expecting that will happen. You will not achieve that much of a benefit in the future after the project completion. So we are assuming there is a demand. That's why there's a rationale that you needed this project. So if you have, that's why you are also designing your project to meet that demand. So if that is not there, then obviously there will be no demand. And then also that's why we are looking at the financial sustainability of that is that, for instance, a certain project, it has a couple of years of the O&M cost embedded in the project cost, investment project, but we are also assuming that there will be a O&M cost, which we take it into account, so that the benefit will be there in the future. Otherwise, the cost is not the project cost. This is a very similar, easy to understand is when you're constructing a transmission line or distribution line or transmission line, that's easier. Then you look at the backwards, forward. If you look at the transmission line, you have to make sure that there is a demand through the distribution line. Okay? So you have to justify in the RRP when you appraise a project, there should be a good rationale there. There is enough capacity of distribution line, and there is enough power that you are transmitting and then transferring to the consumer. Okay, but the investment cost is only for the transmission. Okay, so in that case, if we are measuring benefit after the one through the distribution system, so that what we need is all the cost of the willing charge of the transmission charge, as well as the price of the electricity which you will transmit through the transmission line, should be included in the cost in addition to your investment cost. Otherwise, the benefit will not happen. So even in the future. So that's where we're looking at.
But then, for instance, many of the transportation sector projects, it's very tempting to exaggerate the potential demand after the project. To justify the projects.
we are not doing, hopefully we are not doing that type of things. That's why we are looking at, realistic demand of the, that's why, the operation department, they're all going down there and then they do the traffic counting. And then they look at the population growth and GDP growth. And then, of course, there might be some of this overestimated demand or something that, it can happen. But there are other factors that, that we will not know what would happen in the future, so that, we have to, have a more realistic good demand. That is the water.
I guess all these unpredictable future and uncertainties are also reflected in this particular type of approach, where you perform the risk analysis and
that's why we are doing the risk analysis. The risk analysis, probabilistic. How much is the probable that this economic this project will not. This will be economically viable. That's the risk analysis that we're looking at in terms of probability. That's why we are putting more weight on the sensitivity analysis of the critical parameter that we see. What will happen if there is certain delays? What will happen if there is a change of the fuel or changes of the labor cost or any cost? But that we are looking at in the sensitivity risk analysis. But any kind of a political shock or external shock cannot be foreseen. Right. Even we are looking at in the environmental projects, some of these environmental projects that, we are looking at the probabilistic of the, because there are ADB sponsored project on the kind of, flood protection, environmental protection. Of course, it might come cyclone or something. Then what will happen? Then we are calibrating to see that, so we are measuring the benefit from that aspect that, what will be the probabilistic if cyclone hits some country, and then that will generate that much of damage, and then we are looking at what will be the probability of having this a cyclone, and then we calibrate, and then we are putting that as a benefit of the one. So this is a part of it. This is new guideline and new step instruction we're looking at is that we are looking at all this infrastructure. Projects or something that these are we are looking at 9%. When it's kind of poverty, health, and social projects, we are looking at the hurdle rate as a 6%. And if any project which is really for the basic needs of the population in small island, remote area, then we are not conducting the internal rate of return or cost benefit analysis. We are looking at only what will be the, what will be the best cost effectiveness analysis. We are conducting that one. Because the reason is simply there is no demand, sufficient demand. Rather, this is, for the basic needs of the people. So we are looking at only the cost effectiveness analysis. So we are expect that the rationale whole behind this, we have to provide it as a service to the population. That's why what will be the most cost-effective way of providing the services, and that is what we're doing. Anyway, cost-effectiveness analysis, we're looking at more discounted cost and discounted benefit, unit price that we have to estimate that.
So I guess this will be the last question. I'm just curious that based on all the economic analysis, the performing economic analysis on various projects, have you ever encountered the project that are claiming that it will be a demand created by the project itself?
No, we are looking at that one.
Totally new market, new area that.
No, this is the typical one that we are taking into account. If that is the response to your question, is let's say there is one very small road, and then based on your from the operation department will look at it, the demand. They see that there will be a kind of a new special economic zone will be a cluster, will be developed, and then it will require physical infrastructure where they will have a road. They will look at the high road, highway or, and then of course then, demand that we are estimating, but we are always looking at that aspect that we're looking at, the consumer surplus, this is a producer surplus in that sense, we're looking at generated traffic in addition to the normal traffic demand.
I see.
So you're counting, and then based on that, currently it's only 10 units. And then we're looking at in terms of 10%, so later on 12, 11, but because of this road, that there will be a generated traffic, that is the normal traffic for projections, but then there is generated. And then because of the road, that they are, diverting the route. So for instance, this is the one which we're looking at. So that is some benefit, so to say, or additional demand will coming, and that we are capturing this additional demand. So that's the welfare gains, so to say, because when we talk about the consumer surplus, there will be often, let's say there is a huge, very big demand, and then your project is only supplying or satisfying only part of the demand. Obviously, the whole, whatever you supply with the project will be consumed.
Right.
Then we don't take it into consideration of there's a price inelastic. No matter how the changes are, it will be supplied. But if we look at the downturn demand curve, and then when we look at the demand, and then there will be always a consumer surplus, welfare gains, due to the price changes, then this is another demand that you are generating. That is the welfare gain that we are estimating as consumer surplus.
Now, thank you very much for today's session. And before closing, there are announcements that today's webinar and all the other related documents, you can find them through the KLN website, where the Asia Leadership Program is currently posted. And if you have any questions or the additional questions that you want to ask, or keep on discussing on some points, please send email to the inquire@adbleadership.asia, and then we can respond to you. And thank you very much, Dr. Nam, today.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's it.